Hey guys, thank you so much for stopping by the garden today. We're going to do a little video on reviving my orchid. So I noticed that over these past couple weeks, if you see, she is getting wrinkly leaves that are starting to look pretty rough. Now she's been through a lot, she's been transplanted once before, and I gotta be honest, I've never owned an orchid before. So she was doing really well in the pot she was in before I transplanted her. As soon as I transplanted her, she started acting funny. Now she does have these beautiful, beautiful blooms on her, which you can see are really nice and healthy. We've been feeding with Mag Pro, which is a Dynagrow system. It's like a 3-12-6, so it has really low nitrogen, high in phosphorus and potassium. So even though we have really nice and healthy blooms, I started to notice that the leaves were getting really wrinkly. Now you can have healthy blooms. I did a little research on these. These are Phalaenopsis, I believe, and these are, you know, really good plants to have and really easy if they're under the right conditions. Now, I noticed these roots were starting to get really bad. They were starting to rot away, and so I took her out of the pot because these leaves were just looking so rough. Now she's starting to plump back up because I cut some of the dead off a few days ago. Now this is what I took off. I wanted to, before I put her in a tinier pot. Now I really feel that putting orchids like this in a tiny pot is a lot better than a big pot, because you can see with all that orchid bark and matter in there in the medium, this orchid is rotting away. Look at all these roots. So roots should not look like this. This is all dead and mushy, wet, and it just can't suck up any water, and that's why it's wrinkling. So I cut a few of the dead off that I seen. This is what your roots should look like. These are nice healthy roots it still has. So not a lot of the roots got killed off. I mean, we've lost quite a bit of roots, but we have still healthy roots on here. We have more pushing out that I see. So what I'm gonna do is transplant her back into the smaller pot. Now you can see the size root system on this. You know, it's not much. And these grow aerial roots, which aerial roots will grow from the air. You know, they're for the air, and they actually collect the moisture in the air from the roots sticking out of the pot. Now I'm gonna need 2 hands to do this, but we're gonna put her in here and I'll be right back so I can show you guys why we're doing this. And it's so important to keep these area roots sticking out of the pot because they stay nice and healthy. Now as you can see, I had her in this big old pot with all this potting medium, and her roots were covered. Now those roots were starting to rot away and break down, and I knew in my head that that was going to happen, but I did it anyway. And this is the result of it. You know, I've just never owned them before, so I really didn't know much information on them. But that's why I'm sharing it with you guys, because it was a big mistake that I did. You know, they're kind of getting lost in here. They're being buried by all that orchid bark, and they don't need a lot of that to grow. So this would be perfect for that size. You don't want to go bigger. Smaller is better as long as you have some of the roots in there. So we're going to break this up. You know, if you have any big pieces that might damage it, usually I just go ahead and snap the big pieces in half. It's really easy to break this stuff. Don't waste any. It's awesome to use for bromeliads and stuff like that, which we're going to get a video done for you later today on my bromeliad. I'm going to repot it in some nice orchid bark and some nice soil so I can show you guys how to make those thrive as well. I kind of, just to be honest with you guys, I kind of messed up on my bromeliad, which you will get to see him later. And these grow the same way as them. In a way, you know, they grow in crotches of trees. They don't need much soil medium to grow. So we're going to do a little mixture on that guy later. But for this one, we're just going to fill it up with a little bark at the bottom. You want to cover the bottom. We're going to place these roots in here really, really gently. But we're going to definitely leave some sticking out as well, because that's really going to encourage it to stay healthy. Now this is going to be really heavy, obviously, you know. This pot's going to be so heavy to the point where it can topple over. So we're going to have to provide a lot of stability. We're going to have to get these roots in here like this. And then we're going to cover a little bit of orchid bark all the way around it to snuggle it in. But we're going to leave these roots sticking out because that's really important. When you have roots sticking out of your orchid plant, leave them alone and they will be just fine. We might even go to the store and get like a smaller little pot. If we get a short and stocky pot, then that might be better for my orchid so it can trail over the top. I think we're going to go find one. I think we're going to find a short and stocky pot at the store once we go, and we're going to transplant it into that, because this is really long, which is fine, but when you have an orchid the size of this, it's really tough to stabilize it in a pot that small. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video in the best way possible to revive your orchid and not make these same mistakes. They require no direct sun at all, indirect, bright light, really bright light. They benefit from it. These blooms are really sensitive, so if you do touch them or transplant this plant while it's doing the blooming, you want to be really careful not to bump into them because they can bruise really easily. As far as watering, you really don't want to water these guys too much. As soon as that soil is dry all the way to the bottom, then you can go ahead and mist those roots up. I really don't, or you can water with a watering can. But I found that since I've been watering all the way through with a watering can, those roots been rotting out on me. So I usually just hold it over the sink, water at the watering can all the way through, let that water drain out, put it in a pot or with a dish underneath, and let it dry. If there's any water in that dish underneath within 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you can go ahead and discard that water. This way your orchid's not sitting in water. Another thing I found out is don't water from above. So I used to spray my orchids, which is fine. You can spray the leaves down with magnesium, Epsom salt. I do that all the time. But you don't want to get water to sit in these little grooves, because what's going to happen is your orchid will start rotting in here. They're not supposed to have water within these grooves like a bromeliad. So just make sure if you do wet it, you definitely soak that water up with a paper towel or something. So bright indirect light, and water only once that soil is dried out all the way to the bottom, this potting medium, the orchid bark. And once these feel dry, they'll turn like real silver when they need some water. But luckily we have some nice and healthy roots, and I think we're going to be okay. So we're going to go ahead, get some soil medium there, and just show you the finished result. Alright you guys, so I went and searched around for more containers, and I found this one. So it's a lot wider, and it's a little more taller too. Now I put some orchid bark down at the bottom, as you can see, and then I sat her right on top. She's sitting sideways, her stump's right there, and then I pushed up all these roots because you can see new root growth. So I know she's healthy. She will come back. I really think she's going to be healthy and come back quite a bit. She's going to come back with a vengeance. Now we have healthy roots sticking out here. We got roots out here. So we're good. We're going to leave them aerial roots out. They're called aerial roots because they will suck up the moisture out of the air. They grow great in my zone, which is Central Florida, Zone 9B. Our branches are starting to get nice and green because we've been feeding with Mag Pro, and we're not going to add too much more soil medium, actually orchid bark. I call it soil medium, but it's just a potting medium. It's orchid bark, and you can see I put a stick in the middle. I stabilized one of the branches, and the other branches are being held by that stick. I just kind of weaved it in between. So we have our nice beautiful blooms that won't get damaged. They did well during the transplant, so we didn't break any. And they're just gonna, be healthy. They're gonna last for a little while so we can enjoy them. All of them opened, but one little guy right there on the end, he kind of fell off. I think I bumped him more than anything. I didn't think that we were lacking any nutrients. Maybe I was. You just never know with plants sometimes. But that's how it should look. It shouldn't be in a really big pot. I mean, that was such a mistake. Look at that pot size compared to this one. So we're going to utilize this terracotta pot for our succulents instead. And if you want, you can always plant this little orchid thing in a plastic pot and then insert it into like a terracotta pot without drainage, and then just make sure you discard any of that water underneath every time you water. I can tell her leaves are starting to plump back up just a little bit, but we're really wrinkly, and this means she stopped sucking up water. And if you don't fix the problem really fast, as soon as you see those signs, it's really tough for orchids to come back from a lot of stress. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope this video helps you in the best way possible to take care of your little orchid babies. And I'll see you next time out in the garden. Let me know if you need any help. I'm always here for you, and I love what I do. Bye-bye.